I have an entire 2,000 plus word script ready for this entire topic, but thankfully the internet delivers with a convenient article that can be used as a framework for this entire thing. So here's an article from GamesBeat. There's a video format on it, but I'd like to talk more on what's written here. Fortunately, they're not hiring game journalists to get stuck on a tutorial level, but the ineptitude still shows regardless. 2018 was the year of outraged fans discovering their power. This is very similar to another article that they did around the end of last year. I remember this article very well because I also did a video on this exactly before the ending of last year. If yearly hot take from GamesBeat is gonna be a regular thing on this channel, I'm not exactly complaining because this article is so hilariously bad. The article starts off by mentioning the articles that they did in the previous years, including the one that I talked about in my last video. I find that article quite hilarious because the writer's pronunciation of SJW shows how completely out of touch he is with the culture war. That's just freaking hilarious, writer. I hope that was meant to be a joke because otherwise I would laugh even harder. The writer talks about how 2018 offers us a lot of events and it's very difficult to exactly pin down to a specific trend that really makes 2018 to be what it is. There are some trends such as game developer unions to make sure that they are treated fairly, especially after the controversy that Telltale had to get through for their crunching culture. This could also be the year of Fortnite and the rise of other digital distribution platforms. Those are all important for sure, but the writer wants to talk about something that continues to happen from last year, and that, my friend, is outrage fans. This is the part where the writer talks about how YouTube in 2017 has been used by opportunistic YouTubers to make money from angering the fans. Although one thing that I noticed from last year is that while the outrage towards the progressives are still there, it's not as frequent as I remembered. Maybe because Rags haven't been making videos as of late, and Yongya is a relatively moderate guy, and I watch Yongya a lot more these days because he actually produces content. No offense, Rags. So you should at least be glad that it's not as bad as it was from back in 2017, especially since you're the type of person who would put Rags in the front cover of your last article. But going back to the previous paragraph, you're basically implying that the content that people make on YouTube regarding the outrage towards publishers, feminists, and SJWs are artificially made for the sake of content, and that they're really not doing anything wrong. I was about to question that writer, but trust me, let this writer speaks. He's giving us the best of the best lols.
This has led to a large group of creators on YouTube jumping from one controversy to the next. If they find a topic that reliably gets views, they stick with it until their audiences grows old. Then they move on to the next one. If the next controversy doesn't exist, YouTube creators manufacture one.
And the writer did not disappoint with the examples. No, really. He didn't.
You can find dozens of videos trying successfully to bait gamers into believing that a class of media elites called the excellent platformer Cuphead racist.
Yes. You absolutely can. These videos are talking about this article specifically, Cuphead and the racist specter of flasher animation. This article is stupid, and people talk about how stupid this article is. I don't see the issue here. Is it because it's only one article and that it's hyperbolic to assume that a class of media elites are calling Cuphead racist just because of one article? I didn't even make a video on this article, at least as far as I remembered. I read it and I tweeted about it, summarizing the article's content. Now I remember, this article basically criticized Cuphead for not showing how racist the past was, and we need to expose it through this game. Oh wow, that criticism became rather interesting in retrospect because now we have 2018 video games essentially sanitizing the past instead of exposing how terrible they are. And yes, you are right, writer. There are tons of people out there who makes YouTube content talking about the outrage on Cuphead thanks through this article. You're basically saying that just because one article says that Cuphead is racist, doesn't mean that other people are saying that Cuphead is actually racist, or that there's a real outrage happening on Cuphead being racist. Now that isn't true. The outrage isn't faked, it's just that they're exaggerated or hyperbolized. Let's ignore about that article for a second and talk about how Kotaku, a really prominent gaming news outlet, shilled this same article and said, wow, this writer is actually making a really good point. A big gaming outlet is sharing this article far and wide about how Cuphead is racist for not being racist. The point is, there are people who made these arguments and we're making fun of them because they're ridiculous. I did notice that you're not refuting the argument that Cuphead being racist is ridiculous. We might disagree that the outrage is fabricated, but at least we agreed that it isn't racist. Or do you?
And in August, many of the same creators attempted to convince people that SJWs were freaking out about jokes in Doom Eternal.
Yes, they did. And you know what? I'll give this one to you, writer. This is a good example. Now, I didn't do a video on this, but I did live stream on this specific topic because even back then, I recognized that this particular outrage, while very entertaining, is really not worth a video on. It's an incredibly trivial outrage that isn't fake. It's real, and you can totally find people getting outraged on this. It's just exaggerated by the people who are on the anti-SJW side. It's mostly just people on Twitter getting outraged, and that is really not worth a video on for me. That, and there's really not enough material to make a video on. It's just a bunch of nobodies being outraged on Twitter. They're incredibly entertaining for sure, which is why I put it on a meme stream, but there's still a bunch of nobodies on Twitter. There are many other topics that are more important to talk about, and in that same month where that outrage happened, the one topic that is absolutely worthy of discussion is the plagiarism being done by Philip Mewson, and his really terrible excuse for all of that. To say that the outrage is faked for the views is not true at all. It isn't fake, it's just overly exaggerated by the people on the anti-SJW side. The writer linked to a video by Sean, a relatively popular far-left YouTuber, talking about the fake outrage of Doom Eternal. I did watch the video, and it conveyed exactly what I thought when the outrage came out. It's just a bunch of nobodies on Twitter, and for me, it's not worth making a video on. It is, however, pretty fun live streaming the entire stupidity. Now, of course, I disagree with Sean a lot on this video, particularly the part where the rhetoric is somehow racist, but the main important point that needs to be focused here is that the outrage is exaggerated, and on that one, I agree. So, congratulations, writer. You have given me one example that convinces me that you might have a point. You might have a legitimately good argument to support your case. Good job, writer. Good job. Unfortunately, it doesn't go well for you from this point on.
In both of those cases, the controversies that the YouTube creators were reacting to did not exist. A couple of people talked about Cuphead's art having an origin in racist cartoons. For Doom Eternal, all it took was one or two tweets that no one would have noticed until the opportunists jumped on it to fuel their business of outrage.
Well, those are just two out of God knows how many games or any other entertainment media that people got outraged at in current year. Considering that those two controversies are not as big as, say, Battlefield 5's controversy, I think the writer is cherry-picking on the examples to prove the point that YouTubers are exaggerating. Sometimes they do. Well, a lot of times they do, I admit, but that doesn't discredit the rest of the things that people get outraged at. The writer then talks about Battlefront 2 and how the controversy managed to cause CA and Disney to pull off the loot box practices. The writer then said that it's a win for gamers, but he also said that if they can't get loud enough to scare Disney, they can't get loud enough to scare anyone. And since then, the scenario plays again and again and again. Yes, writer, this is how the gaming community is supposed to work. If gamers notice horrendous business practices like Battlefront 2's loot boxes, they are absolutely within their right to get outraged and air their complaints. But then the writer talks about Fallout 76 Power Armor Edition and how the fans didn't get the bag that was advertised. The writer didn't really say that there's merit to this outrage, as Bethesda straight up misled people with its false advertisement. However, the writer did use this example to prove the point that it isn't about getting the right bag, it is about outrage and finding reasons to justify that outrage. I think having a misleading advertisement is a very good reason to get outraged at. Then the writer talks about Diablo Immortal, and this is where the hot takes come in. At first, the writer acknowledged the reason why people are outraged, but then the writer pivots from that to say that the Diablo fandom manufactured multiple false justifications for their outrage. Really, writer, please, I would love to hear this.
Fans first claimed that Blizzard wasn't involved in making the game, but it is. Then some people claim that it is a reskin of a Chinese Diablo clone, but it isn't. If you go on social media or YouTube, you will find many other random justifications for why what Blizzard is doing isn't just disappointing. It is a scam, or it is unethical, or it is a slap to the face for the real fans.
Wow, writer. I mean, wow. This paragraph contains one of the most epic failures that I have ever encountered in an article. Let me illustrate to you why, because it is so freaking hilarious how this writer failed. First off, none of these claims have any citations. There are no links to support these claims. The only thing that you do is to tell people, hey, just look for them in social media. There are tons of them in social media. That's rather lazy, writer. You're a journalist after all. You did cite the outrage for Cuphead and Doom Eternal on YouTube, but you didn't cite one for Diablo Immortal? Second, you tried to refute one claim saying that it is a reskin of a Chinese Diablo clone by saying that, well, it isn't, with no links or citations to prove that. I did a little bit of research and, ooh, what's this? It's an article from the same writer who said that Diablo Immortal looks like other NetEase games that look like Diablo. Wait, what? So you're claiming that it isn't a reskin, but you did say that it looked similar to another game from the same game developer. How far are you going to move the goalposts up your ass, writer? Pretty damn far, as the reason why the writer didn't consider this a reskin is because, get this, the writer personally thinks that it doesn't look the same. Good job, writer. Good job. Third, and in my opinion, the most epic of the failures, you criticize a bunch of YouTubers on the Doom Eternal and Cuphead outrage for either citing one article or citing a bunch of random nobodies on Twitter. And yet, on this very same article, not only you didn't cite the people making these arguments at all, so you are actually much worse than these YouTubers, you're basically telling people, hey, these people are making these ridiculous arguments. Go find them on social media or YouTube. It's right there. They're right there. Just go look for them. So you're telling me to go out to the wild web to find the claims that these people make by going to social media and YouTube to find either tweets, posts, or videos from very small accounts that barely have any influence in the platform. Writer, isn't this exactly the same thing that the YouTubers did to prove their claim that SJWs are outraged on Cuphead and Doom Eternal? Are you telling me to find the outrage that you claim to exist even if they come from small accounts with little to no influence? So in other words, you are telling me to do the exact same thing that you criticize others for doing. Nice try, writer. Nice try. I really love this paragraph so much. Asking people to go out to find these tweets and YouTube videos making the claims that the writer makes. I cannot believe I'm going to quote Sean. But to quote Sean,
you know, is it really a controversy if you have to go looking for it?
This is the same video that you cited, writer, to prove your point. And this same video tells you what you're asking people to do right now is stupid. So congratulations for this unintentional self-own. What an epic failure of an article. You did so damn well, and then you pulled this off. Please. Give me more. The writer then talks about the firing of Jessica Price from ArenaNet. You know, the writer who implied that a popular Guild Wars 2 streamer is sexist for simply criticizing her thread. You know, the writer who got fired for treating customers like absolute ass in social media. Please tell me, writer, what's your defense on this?
In July, Guild Wars developer ArenaNet fired 2 of its workers for not putting up with disrespectful fans. Then in September, Riot Games fired 2 employees for calling out fans who were upset about an official League of Legends event that excluded men.
Oh man, thank you, writer. Thank you for giving me this amazing article. In both examples that you showed, the people being fired are the ones being disrespectful, not the fans. So whatever your defense for these game developers, I don't need to argue. I can just show people their tweets. But hey, I gotta give you credit. At least you give citations to this paragraph. It does help me to find the meme stream where I talked about the Riot Games controversy.
What's dangerous here is that people see that gaming mobs work, and people can also see how easy it is to get gamers angry. It's even good business, so reactionaries are using this to go after low-level, marginalized people at major corporations.
Stop. I'm gonna die. This article is going to kill me. Now you're claiming that these reactionaries are going after low-level marginalized people. And then the writer essentially white-knighted Jessica Price, saying that he wouldn't qualify what she said as rude. Okay, writer, whatever you say, please keep going. You are an absolute lolcow with this article, and I am enjoying this year-end gift. The writer then talked about... Oh boy, writer, you do not want to talk about this one. Trust me, your entire argument will be proven completely invalid if you do so. No? Okay, fine. Your funeral. So the writer then talked about Insomniac Spider-Man and the lack of a certain suit from a certain popular Spider-Man film franchise. The writer then talked about how the studio faced backlash for not including the Spider-Man suit from the Sam Raimi films in the game. That disappointment turned into fans accusing the studio of lying and ignoring the fans. Now, the very first time I heard about this controversy is when a writer from VG247 got really salty for people getting what they wanted, as in the same time where the DLC got released. I'm very active on Twitter and I do pay attention to Spider-Man PS4, so believe me when I say that everyone loved this game regardless of whether or not the Raimi suit is there. I mean, I love the Raimi films, but I don't need to play the game with that outfit. In fact, I played the game on Homecoming's original Spider-Man suit that you get after you collect all of the game's backpacks. It's very rare, if ever, that I see people complaining about the lack of Raimi's suit on Twitter, and believe me, I am very active on that social media. If that's a thing that people are complaining about, this would easily be on my meme stream because of how stupid the demand is, and yet I couldn't find it. I did try to search on Twitter based on dates, and yet the best that I could find are people bashing the people who asked for the Raimi suit. I did, however, find this ridiculous change.org petition with nearly 300 people signing, but seriously, that's it? Just around 300 people asking for the Raimi suit? I asked for my fans on whether or not this is a real controversy, and even they have mixed thoughts on it. So my point on this entire thing is, you're gonna talk about a controversy that I didn't even know existed. A controversy that is so ridiculously insignificant, I didn't even know if it really happened. The article is probably right. Maybe there's only one very vocal person who complained about it, and he got buried under so many tweets criticizing him. Both the VG247 and the GameSpeed article really didn't help, as they didn't cite anything. No tweets, no videos, nothing. Say what you want about the anti-SJWs exaggerating the outrage, at least they have the tweets. So in other words, you have taken this controversy and exaggerated it, something that you criticize other content creators for. I told you that this will render your entire argument pointless. You are criticizing people for exaggerating outrage, and yet here you are, exaggerating outrage. But the writer, however, ends with a couple of notes that I do want to talk about for a bit.
If you work at Insomniac, how does that make you feel? You worked for months to make this thing happen, and instead of getting credit for that labor, you get a crowd of gamers shouting how they made you bend to their will.
And this is a topic that ultimately becomes the main point of this entire discussion, a point that the writer distracts me so much because of all the misinformation, but let's talk about the main point. You have consumers demanding game developers to cater to their will, and game developers having to listen to those people whining about their ridiculous requests. When game developers actually cater to their will, this is a victory to all the outraged consumers. Okay, writer, let's talk about that for a bit. Dealing with terrible consumers is something that you have to deal with when you are in game development. Not only that, you also have to deal with the demands of the publishers. The one thing that arguably caused Diablo to be what it is. You either tell the consumers to behave more, which is absolutely not possible, or you tell game developers that they need to have a thicker skin to be able to survive in this industry. And thankfully, the writer gives a perfect solution.
But it's possible that this defining trend is going to scare people away from making games, and that's only gonna hurt ourselves in the end.
And you know what? That's fine. I mean, do we need game developers who are so thin-skinned that they're going to accuse people of sexism for simply criticizing them? I don't think so. This is a risk of being in game development. You're going to be put in crunch. You're going to be developing games under the direction of the publisher. You're not going to have too much headroom for your creativity to shine. And the best part of all, if the publisher screws up your game, the gamers are going to bash you, your creations, and worse, they're not going to buy your game. Being a game developer developer is indeed pretty hard. It's a really taxing work, both physically and mentally. You're gonna be dealing with a lot of stress, not just from customer feedback, but also from the terrible corporate culture. There's not much that you can do to fix this other than simply dealing with it. You can't make consumers to be less harsh in giving feedback because this is the internet, it's always gonna happen. It's also impossible to tell game companies to change their corporate culture. So all of those things are risks that you need to deal with if you want to be in the game development business. If you can't handle them, then don't be in the business. Game development is something that isn't without its risks. So I'm gonna tell you right now that these are all the sorts of things that you need to face. If you can't handle them, feel free to quit. There will be many other people who are more skilled, more passionate, and more strong-willed to do the job. So in conclusion, this article spreads a lot of misinformation regarding consumer outrage, and the writer makes hilariously hypocritical arguments, as expected from GamesBeat. And since we're talking about outrage and unreasonable demands, do you want me to begin talking about the ridiculous demands that you progressives make to game developers?